Hi everybody, Jillian here. Welcome back to my channel for a new Heritage Scrapbook process video. Here is a look at some of the supplies I'm going to be using today. I've pulled 5 different pieces of Maggie Holmes pattern paper, both from her New Bloom collection and her previous Shine collection. I have some random labels and bits and things from my ephemera file, and then some state stickers from Studio Calico, and the normal assortment of thickers and tile stickers to go ahead and get my title down. So before I get started today, I wanted to show you where I'm going to be getting my journaling from. Well, some of my journaling. It's actually quite interesting. This is a family history book that was given to me by one of my relatives. It was compiled in 1976, and I'm going to be talking about one of the family members who is featured in this part of the book. So we're going to be talking about Myron J. Spocky, born 1884, died 1961. So this book is pretty much just the facts, who married who and what their kids' names were, where they lived. And what's pretty interesting to me is what's not included in here is the fact that Myron was the Wood County Commissioner in Ohio. And this book was compiled after he was in that office. And it's odd to me that they didn't document it in here. I think that's, something notable that would certainly want to be remembered. I actually found, I was actually told about that while looking through some old family photos. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And then I'm going to take some of my facts from this section of the book where it references his branch of the family tree. This week I am in genealogical research mode, and that means that any free brain power that I have is devoted to thinking about what I'm learning. So I have no creative energy, and I give myself permission to use this layout, originally pinned from the Studio Calico member gallery, as inspiration for this layout. When I went back to my Pinterest board, the original link was dead, so I am unable to determine who originally created the layout. If it looks familiar to you guys, please leave me a comment below indicating who may have created it. So the wood grain paper there, I pulled from a paper pad that I had purchased at Michael's. It has a lot of great neutral patterns that I wanted to use as backgrounds for this album. And I cut that down to 9 by 12, and then I'm going to the Maggie Holmes pattern papers, and I'm cutting, I think it's about an inch and a half from each pattern paper. And I thought about using the reverse of that Hello pattern paper as the blue, but it decided it wasn't the tone that I wanted, so I went ahead with the original blue paper that I pulled from the Shine collection. I have all of the papers listed in the description below if you guys are interested in any of them. So now what I'm going to do is just push paper around to try and determine which order I want it in, and I'm being mindful of the different scales of the patterns on each piece of paper. I don't want to put 2 small patterns next to each other, just like I don't want to put 2 large patterns next to each other. Next, I'm going through the labels and things that I had pulled from my little ephemera bowl, and I'm going to put the journaling underneath the photo, just like in the original layout. And I thought about perhaps writing it on some labels so it's a little more legible than just writing it on the wood grain. I didn't love that look, so I abandoned it pretty quickly, but I am going to layer those labels around the photo. Okay, that looks good. I oriented the paper in a way that the darker papers were on the bottom, so it looked a little more grounded towards the bottom of all of those patterns, and then you'll notice that one of the lighter ones is up at the top. So it looked better to me than the way I originally had it, and that was kind of my thought process behind that. So when I flipped this over to trim off the excess, I loved the way those patterns and colors looked together. So I'm being careful to remove them from my desk in that same order so that maybe I can use it for a layout in the future. Then I realized I needed something to map the photo with because it was just looking boring on top of all of those patterns. So I flipped over the green floral and I went ahead and matted it in that bold graphic black and white print. And I made a very, very, very thin border, so it's not too graphic on the layout. Next, I'm moving to my title, and the title is The Politician. I knew that that's what I wanted to use going into this. I have another layout in this album called The Family Historian, and I think that's a theme I'm going to continue as I'm learning more about these people. I think I'm going to, instead of using their names necessarily, I'm going to kind of like draw people in with like a different title than just their names. So I originally pulled out these October Afternoon Daily Flash tile stickers, but then I realized that I had this basic gray alpha sheet. This is from their Urban Luxe collection, and I wanted to go ahead and spell the word "the" with the cream colored stickers because they were lighter, and I just wanted to lighten it up a little bit. It's a pretty heavy title. Those stickers, I'll go ahead and list the font below. I'm not sure what they're called. I got them at Tuesday morning a while ago, so they were only like $2, so that was a steal. Now I want to include the date in the top right of the layout, and that's what I'm using those labels on top of the photo for. So one looked boring to me up there, so I find that when I layer things like that, it looks a little more interesting. I'm doing the same thing on the bottom with the camera because the craft camera on the wood grain paper just looks a little flat, so I wanted to layer another label underneath that. And then I remember that I had these stickers from Studio Calico. I think it's from their That Away collection, which is a few years old. And I have the Ohio sticker in there still. So I'm going to fill in that weird space above the camera and below the gingham pattern paper with the little sticker that says Ohio. So just to talk about the journaling, since my camera ends up running out of memory towards the end, this is Myron Spocky. And like I said, I am taking my journaling from the book. And as I was going through some old family photos with my mother-in-law, I asked her, "Who is this?" And she says, "Oh, that's the commissioner." And I said, "Of what?" And she explained to me that he was the Wood County Commissioner in Ohio. He was also the mayor of Jerry City in Ohio, where he was born. So he is an Ohio man through and through. I don't believe he lived anywhere else, and he ended up running this city, and I thought that was pretty cool. So that's where the title came from. It was pretty much a no-brainer. And then I'm just flipping the layout on its side here so that I can make sure it's straight. And then the journaling on the bottom beneath the photo basically says, Myron Jacob Spocky was born March 19th, 1884 in Jerry City, Ohio. He married Alda Soule in December 1907 when he was 22. They had 7 kids, including Glenn Spocky, who would later go on to have Kay Evangel, Stephen's mother. So like I said before, his city work was not mentioned in this book, and I later determined that he left office in 1953, some 23 years before this book was created. As I was talking to my family about it, we realized that they probably didn't include it because they were not a direct descendant of Myron. It was actually a cousin who had created this book, so perhaps it wasn't important enough to include, from their point of view. So, but I was able to Google him, and then I found out that he left office in 1953, and there was actually a photo of him in the newspaper when he retired. He and some other officers were retiring at the same time, and I was able to glean some information from that. So the last thing that I'm doing is just, before I get my journaling down, is including the year I think this photo was taken. I put 1953 up there because that was his last year in office, and I figured that was a safe enough bet. So that's it. Here's a look at my finished layout along with a couple of close-ups. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to share what I'm currently learning with you guys. It's so fascinating. Be sure to tune in next Saturday for a new Heritage Scrapbook video. See you then!